Hi there, I'm Lew Bear and this is my fibromyalgia story. Forgive me for looking down for notes. I need them to maintain some kind of coherent narrative. There's advice at the end which will hopefully help some people stop their symptoms. But I don't want to get your hopes up too high, as having been to support groups and online forums, I'm pretty convinced that what is currently diagnosed as fibromyalgia is at least 3, anything up to 7, maybe more conditions that doctors don't fully understand yet and are being lumped together due to some similar symptoms. But if you have the same version of fibromyalgia as I do, then maybe I can help you. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. I came down with a virus in the summer of 2009. It was kind of a 24-hour virus. I was feverish, sweating, shaking, really horrible, about as ill as I've ever been. But the next day I woke up feeling just fine, as though it never happened, and went back to work. And that was that. I walked up the stairs to the office and collapsed. Fell to my knees. I was out of breath, tired, head was spinning, and had to sit down for half an hour before I could recover my wits enough to be able to get in the car and drive home again. And things went steadily downhill from there. I got tired more easily as each day passed, and slowly the back pain began to kick in and increase. And I got the diagnosis from my doctor that I was suffering depression. And I'm fairly certain he was right, but I was depressed because I was in pain and tired, and not in pain and tired because I was depressed. Kind of got a bit of the cart before the horse there. And without a proper diagnosis, I kept on trying to return to work, as after a few days rest I'd feel pretty good, I'd go back, manage half a day's work, and then collapse again. And that continued for some time, with my finances steadily worsening, until I demanded a new doctor who ran all the same blood tests again, ruling everything out one by one. Various cancers, I got confirmed that I didn't have HIV, all kinds of things, you know, and it was nice to find out that I didn't have these things. But in the end I went in for an appointment when all these things had been ruled out, and he just looked at me and said, "You've got fibromyalgia." And it really cheered me up for a second. I hadn't heard of it, and I was kind of like, you know, great. What do we do about it? And he just shook his head. Said, "Sorry, this is basically going to be with you for life." Okay, so that was obviously pretty bad, but I could make plans, you know, I knew what was what there. So I was already on the verge of financial ruin. I was behind on the mortgage, bills, everything. But so I gave up on returning to work, began to apply for all the various benefits that I was entitled to, or should be entitled to. And I also had a policy with Unum, on UNUM, however you want to pronounce it. But due to them not accepting any approaches until you've been off work for a month, I hadn't been able to apply for anything until this stage. So I sent off for a claim form, received it in the post. Then about 2 days later, due to having no money coming in, I missed a payment, and they immediately cancelled my policy. I didn't have a leg to stand on, but I'm betting that if I'd missed a payment and hadn't asked for a claim form, that they would have just chased me for the money and carried on my policy. Such is life. And I'm sure anyone who is been through this knows the hell you go through trying to claim benefits, the guilt and the shame you feel knowing you can't take care of yourself, which is only exacerbated by the assessors, who make you feel less than human, who interrogate you more thoroughly than a solicitor would the accused in a serious trial, and determined to make you trip up somewhere, and repeated every 6 months. And worse, with the condition leaving you with occasional good days, I'd go out to the shop or the pub if I had the money, and people would see me. People I'd known for years and considered friends, and call me things like scrounger and faker. You know, what's this made-up disease you're taking my tax money with then? And they didn't get to see the days where I was lying in bed in pain, helpless. And so, yes, I lost a fair few so-called friends in that time, and worse still, I lost them as I needed them more than ever, what with being unable to take care of myself properly and being behind on my mortgage and all the household bills, debt collection agencies on the phone every single day making threats and demands. But luckily some friends did prove true. I began selling everything I didn't need or care about to pay for things like food and heating, and then selling things that I did care about and did need. But I knew the house was going to be repossessed soon, so without a house to put them in, what use were any of these things anyway? So where to live? I was blessed to have a friend in Scotland who took me in. He didn't really have the room for me, but he's an amazing man. Thank you, Rick. I could have easily ended up on the streets were it not for you. I put the few possessions I had left in my friend Stuart's car, and we drove up to Scotland, where I lived for nearly a year. During this time, a relationship that had begun just before moving developed further than either of us ever expected it to, and I moved back down to England to live with my lovely partner. She's been brilliant, but never more so than in that first year or two when she supported me in sorting out my financial difficulties. During my time in Scotland, I'd buried my head in the sand, but now with a permanent address, they needed to be resolved. We saved up the money required to go bankrupt. Yes, it costs nearly £600 to go bankrupt. I would have loved to have laughed with the irony, but it was a bit too painful. But the day the bankruptcy came through and I knew that all the threatening phone calls and letters and everything would stop, it was such a relief. I literally sang and danced through the house, paid for it the next day and seized up and in agony for nearly a week. But it was well worth it for that moment of joy. And my partner then supported me in coming off benefits. My symptoms have been easing up a little anyway, enough that I had maybe 2-3 good days a week instead of one. She bought a PA system for me and I began putting on some open mics. My symptoms were always worst in the mornings anyway, so doing work that was evening work made sense. I could work at my own pace, make sure to rest in the days leading up to running one, thus ensuring a good day. Always suffer for the day after, but you know, it was pretty good. Most weeks I ended up with less money than I had on benefits, but the fact that I was in charge of my own destiny and not in a sweat every 6 months wondering whether this time I'd get an assessor who could see the pain I was in, or whether I'd get one who'd decide that because I had 2 good days a week I could work. I often asked if they could point me to an employer who'd be willing to take on someone who could only work as and when they were able, but never actually got an answer to that. During this time I also started busking a little whenever I felt good enough, and here was the point that I got lucky. I mean, it was a miracle really when you look at it. Many professional singers advise against dairy. It can sort of phlegm you up a little, so I thought, right, well, if I'm busking I want to be able to sing as well as I can on a good day and as long as I can. So I decided to switch to green tea, cut out cheese, any other dairies and stuff like that so that I could sing for longer. And purely by chance, during these first few days of doing that, I only ate chicken, fish and pork as my meats. Within a few days I started to feel a lot better, and after just over a week it was like I didn't have fibromyalgia at all. After some experimentation, I discovered it was caused by proteins from the family bovidae, which includes cows, sheep and goats and all their dairies, so I had to cut all of that out straight away. You'd think it would be obvious if it's caused by food, but it's not like a nut allergy, you know, I eat it and then suddenly, you know, if I had a cheeseburger today, I'd be fine for the rest of today, no problems, and tomorrow I would wake up in agony. And then those symptoms would last for a week. And at the end of that week, I would have what I call my come down day, because I think basically being in pain, it leaves, you know, your body floods you with adrenaline, to help get you through the pain basically, and then when the pain goes, it withdraws that adrenaline. You don't need it anymore, and suddenly it floods you with endorphins instead, you know, saying whatever you're doing, keep doing this, keep doing it because this is good. And so for a day I'm basically lying in bed, you know, kind of, it's pleasant feeling, don't get me wrong, but I'm still unable to do anything. very unclear thinking, very sort of unable to focus or concentrate on anything. But that, I always know that when I've reached that stage, you know, that's the last day, and tomorrow I'll be a normal human being again, or as close as I ever get to it. So I'd recommend anyone diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and particularly anyone who has symptoms similar to me, to try cutting out these foods and do it for at least 2 weeks to make sure you get it all out of your system. I mean, they can be hidden in lots of things, like a lot of pork sausages are covered in beef proteins instead of pork casings. Dairy's hidden in everything. I've found whey powder in cashew nuts, for Christ's sake. And even things like hydrocortisol is genetically made using partially beef proteins, and I'm allergic to hydrocortisol. I won't go into details as to how I found that one out. It was quite embarrassing, but yeah. So I don't expect this that advice to help with everyone with fibromyalgia, but hopefully it'll help with some. Like I say, I think that it's many conditions. What has been called fibromyalgia, and what I suffer, this food intolerance, is just one. But if what I've told you today can help even just one other person get out of the hell that I endured, then making this video was well worth it. Good luck, and to everyone who suffers this in whatever form they suffer it.